Hello everyone, Andre here again. Hope you've been having some amazing reads since last time I saw you. And today we have another book review, but before I jump into that, let me just say thank you to all the new subscribers. You really give me some motivation to do this, and knowing that there are people interested in hearing what I have to say I really appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you so much. And again, if you're new to the channel and you want to hear more about, or you want to hear more book reviews of certain books, just comment away, let me know what you want to hear about, and I'll be happy to make a video for it. So what do we have in store today? Well, we have another book review, like I said. This time we're not starting any new series, we're continuing one that we've reviewed the first book here, and that is Jade War, the second book of the Green Bone Saga. Before we start, let me just say there might be some spoilers for the first book, because again, I'm reviewing the second book of the trilogy, so I will reference things that happen in the first book so that I can give you a proper review of this one. But if you don't want to hear anything about any spoilers and you just want to know the final score, then jump to the end of the video. Otherwise, stay tuned. Again, I'm just going to assume that you're here because you've read the first book, you want to know if the second book is worth it, and therefore you don't really care much about spoilers for the first book. Second book, I won't spoil anything, and if I end up saying something that I shouldn't, I'll put a warning so you can skip ahead. Okay, housekeeping done, let's go to this review. So, Jade War, second book of the Green Bone Saga, written by Fonda Lee. This book was published in 2019, so not many years ago, and not many years after the first book was published. And this is a urban fantasy book, Asian inspired, so if you have been sick of reading Western fantasy, jump into this one, it's quite good. And it's also been nominated for a couple new awards, such as the Locus Award, amongst others, but just thought, yeah, the Locus Award is usually one of the biggest prizes around, so it's been nominated for one, and that's pretty good, and I think it's deserved. As for the synopsis of this book, as usual, I'm just gonna read what the website, Goodreads, or whatever the back of the book says, so if you don't want to hear anything about it, just jump into this timestamp and you'll be able to skip it. Alright? Ready? You sure? Let's go. On the island of Kaikon, the Call family is locked in a violent feud for control of the capital city and the supply of magical jade that endows trained Greenbone warriors with supernatural powers they alone have possessed for hundreds of years. Beyond Kaikon's borders, war is brewing. Powerful foreign governments and mercenary criminal kingpins alike turn their eyes on the island nation. Jade, Kaikon's most prized resource, could make them rich, or give them the edge they need to topple their rivals. Faced with threats on all sides, the Call family is forced to form new and dangerous alliances, confront enemies in the darkest streets and the tallest office towers, and put honor aside in order to do whatever it takes to ensure their own survival, and that of all the green bones of Kaikon. Okay, so that's the synopsis of the book. Before I jump into the review itself of the book, I'm just gonna put here or here somewhere the score I gave for the first book, Jade City, just so you can have a grasp of how I rated it, what were the strong and the weaker points. Not that I thought it was a weak book, I give it a 4 out of 5, so it's quite a good book, just so you can gauge where it's improving or where it's becoming weaker. Especially because most of the times in trilogies there's the so-called middle book syndrome, so I want you to be sure if when I'm reviewing this, if it's a middle book syndrome case or if it's indeed a better book than the first one. But alright, let's move on. You've had time to look at the scores, we can proceed. Okay, starting with our old dear plot. When I finished reading the first book, I was kind of curious to see how this second book would be, because the plot could turn very repetitive and predictable. I mean, we know we follow the Call family, so we end up always cheering for them and we want to fight against the Mountain Clan. So I felt like after the first book, I could predict where the trilogy would go, that the Call family would win, the Mountain Clan would lose, they would all be very happy, almost happily ever after, of course with some of the bad things happening. But were those expectations met, or was that prediction successful? Actually, I don't think it was. I actually think that Fonda Lee was able to subvert my expectations and completely turn my predictions to the other side and make them all wrong, and still feel like what I predicted was just not something that could never happen, but just that there was another way that things could turn, and that was the way it did. And I thought that was amazing. There were a lot of plot points that I was expecting, and suddenly they were turned around and left me mouth open, completely aghast with what just happened. And also, some of the characters were turning ways that I did not expect them to turn, but I was still super engaged on what was happening and what were they doing and how would this impact the overall story. And I think that in a story like this, where the characters are so pivotal for the plot to move forward, the fact that I couldn't exactly predict what was going to happen with them or what decisions they would make actually just made my enthusiasm and my enjoyment for this book even greater, because it would make me want to read about them and not being able to predict things. I think in regards to the plot hasn't changed dramatically. It's still pretty much a continuation of the first book. However, I think it got expanded upon, and because of that, the stakes for it have also expanded. They've become greater, and that's a good succession from the first book to the second, so that the second doesn't feel like a middle book syndrome. We feel like, okay, this is just as important as what was happening in the first book. And because of that, I'm gonna give the plot 5 out of 5 stars. I'm resisting a lot to not say anything about the plot because I don't want to spoil you, but there were some things that I was just so keen to talk about to someone, and I was so frustrated that no one around me was reading this book. And I think some of the plot twists were really bombastic. I felt like all of these small plot twists, or even the big ones, I did not see coming, which didn't happen in Jade City. Jade City had a couple of the plot twists where I was like, okay, yeah, like I understand the twist, but I could see the twist coming as well. It was a bit predictable, but not with Jade War. As for the characters, again, this category is pivotal for the story. And what I mean by this is that I feel like even though protagonists are pivotal for every story, some of the stories, the protagonists just go through the world, or is the world that it acts upon them, or the plot that acts upon the protagonists. Whereas with the Green Bone Saga, I feel that the characters are the ones acting upon the plot or the world. A lot of what matters in this trilogy is how the characters build relationships and how they deal with their own personalities, their own culture, and how it evolves from that. So I think it's just really good the way they're written and how deep they are characterized, because then I can truly connect with them and feel connected to the story and feel like the story is moving forwards as the characters move forwards. I think Fonda Lee writes characters brilliantly. I never felt bored with any of the perspectives that I read. I liked Hilo, I liked Enden, Shay, even some of the characters that I don't want to say here because of spoilers, so that you don't know if certain characters survive or die. But yeah, these three main ones, I was always entertained with them. There is always something that I want to read about them. For example, Hilo, because he's the center point of a lot of action, and then because he's exploring, he's the explorer type of character, and Shay for all the political intrigue, and it's actually the character I identify with most. I think she's so brilliantly written, and I think her personality is so close to people that I know that I feel like I almost know who Shay is. So I think overall this category is still a 5 out of 5. It was able to continue being strong. Fonda Lee did not lose anything from the first book to the second when writing characters. So that is like probably the strongest category out of all the 5. What about world building? Well, I don't know if you remember when I was reviewing Jade City, and if you don't, go watch that video. But one of the criticisms I had most about Jade City was that even though K-Con, the main island where the story happens, feels very real and detailed and also explored, I felt that the rest of the world was quite empty, or at least not as original. And that because of that, that category had a 3 for Jade City. However, for this one, I feel like Fonda Lee heard what I was saying, and of course she didn't, because this book was written way before I produced my video, but she really expanded on the world, and I felt like everything became so much became more real, and it felt amazing. I think it was so good to be exploring new countries and exploring new cultures. I feel like Fonda Lee was able to use this as a vehicle not only to explore the characters and explore how some characters were developing, but also explore, like I said, the cultures and other countries and how they interact with KCON and with the people from KCON. So it was a multiple benefit type of strategy. And I think Fonda Lee probably knew that, and that's why she was able to write it so well. However, I feel like in world building, not everything was perfect. One of the things I liked the most didn't show up as frequently in this book, and that was the Jade magic system. There's still Jade, there's still battles with Jade, but I felt like the first book we explored the magic system a bit more than in this book. And I understand that for some people that really won't matter. For me, I really like magic systems. So every time we get to explore them, I feel very engaged and I want to learn more. So because of that, I felt like the world building wasn't as good. Again, it's just a minor thing, but because of that, I'm giving this category a 4 out of 5. But then again, very, very close to the 5. I feel like that exploration of the Jade magic system, it didn't harm the story not having it. However, for me, it would have improved it a little bit. Our second last category is writing style, and there's really not much to say about writing style. Fonda Lee was able to continue maintaining her quality in writing. Then again, because not many years have passed between the first and the second book, so I feel like probably she just jumped from writing Jade City to Jade War, and therefore her writing skills maintained quite consistently. And I like it. I think her writing style walks this middle path of not being too simple or too elaborated, and it works for the type of book it is. Like I said in the previous review, she writes very directly, and it adapts to the characters, because the characters are always making like direct decisions and everything is very full of action and now situations. And so a writing style that goes like that, where we feel like the sentences are sharp and the sentences are also like carrying us forward, I feel like it's well adapted, and I congratulate Fonda Lee for doing it. It's really, really good. And for that, I'm also going to give 4 stars out of 5 for this category, and hope that the third book will just blow me away in terms of writing. And finally, for our final category, it's enjoyment. I enjoyed this book. Was it amazing, mind-blowing? At certain times, yes, but at other times, maybe not as much. There were times where I was feeling a bit bored, or I felt that some of the relationships between characters were becoming a bit soap opera-ish, kinda, and that detracted my enjoyment a tiny little bit. It was just enough that I didn't have that keenness, or like I wasn't excited to go read this book. I wasn't finding time to read it, but whenever I had time to read and I was reading, I was enjoying that time. There weren't like any big things that made me not enjoy it. There's just some slight tweaks that could have been made so that I could hit the peak of enjoyment for this book. And the fact is, I am very interested in reading the third book, and I have it with me. Haven't started yet, but I will very soon. So for that, my enjoyment, again, it's another 4 out of 5, but with a lot of potential for the last book to be a 5 as well, because again, if everything's done perfectly, of course I'm going to enjoy this book even more. Okay, readers, so that is it. All our 5 categories have been reviewed, and this is the final result. I'm gonna put maybe here. And so as you can see, it's really strong. Like Jade City was already quite good. It was able to get a 4 out of 5, and Jade War is just improving on it. Fonda Lee was able to improve in the plot and in the world building while maintaining all the other categories very strongly stable, which I find amazing. It just proves that it is a good trilogy so far. The first book was good, the second book is even better. So I just have to congratulate Fonda Lee for doing it, because I'm glad she did it and I got to enjoy this work of art pretty much. And so the final score for Jade War will be a 4.4 out of 5. As you can see, it's just getting closer and closer to the 5. And hopefully Jade Legacy, the last book, will be a 5 out of 5. That's all I hope for. And the fact that 2 books that I've read from Fonda Lee were so strong in their scores just cemented my opinion that Fonda Lee is an author to follow, and I'm definitely keen to read other things that she writes aside from the Green Bone Saga. I know that she wrote 2 other short stories from this universe. I am interested in reading them, maybe not as keen as to read the Green Bone Saga, but I'm curious to read other worlds that she writes about. I want to see what is the next idea that she'll come up with. But anyways, that is all for today. I hope you've been having some amazing reads. If you've read Jade War or Jade City and you want to say if you agree or not with me, comment down below. I'm more than happy to hear your opinions. If you want to recommend some books because you thought that they were quite similar to Jade War and that I would like it, please do so. I'm more than happy to get some recommendations. I love when my to be read list increases, even though it gives me some anxiety, but that's part of being a book nerd, right? Alright, don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and like, and I guess I'll be seeing you soon. Bye, adeus!